The alarm clock rang at the usual time, 6 in the morning, and my wife, Anita, and I got up to start our day. I groaned loudly, pulling myself up on the edge of the bed and lowering my feet to the floor. "What's the matter?" "You sound like an old man," she teased as she headed for the bathroom. "I feel like an old man after what you did to me last night." Remembering the previous evening, I could hear her laughing in the bathroom. She humped me vigorously and gave me a very sensual blowjob. She was leaving on a business trip today and would probably be gone all week, and I would be home alone. I wasn't looking forward to it. I heard the shower running and wondered if I should join her, but then decided I didn't care. She'd gotten too much out of me the night before. Back in the bedroom later, she looked chipper while I sat there feeling sorry for myself. "Come on, old man, get up and walk. We need 2 breadwinners to pay the mortgage on this place." "Okay, I'm out of here," I told her as I walked to the bathroom to relieve myself and take a shower. Later, we met downstairs for breakfast before she headed to the airport, and I headed to work. Anita is an attorney, and we both worked at a mid-sized manufacturing facility in St. Louis. She specializes in negotiations and travels with teams when they are working outside the plant, and this trip involved negotiating a new subcontract with a large aerospace firm in Denver. She traveled several times a year for such negotiations, and was away for at least a week each time. She was 35 years old and had graduated with honors from State University 12 years earlier. Anita was very attractive, 5 feet 4 inches, 125 pounds with lovely feminine features. 34, 24, 35, and I fell madly in love and coveted her. I'm Jack Fillmore, working as an engineer for the same company as my wife. I'm 37 years old, 165 pounds. I exercise to stay in shape. We both like to play golf and often get together as a foursome with friends. We met at a company picnic, and for me it was love at first sight. It must have been the same for her, because after a whirlwind courtship, we got married 6 months later. We have been married for 7 years, and just 3 months ago we bought the house we live in now. We plan to start a family in this house, and Anita was just on birth control pills when she returned from a trip. We were looking forward to starting a family, and she planned to be a stay-at-home mom until the kids went to school. Our parents lived in the neighborhood, and I know they expected us to start a family soon. After breakfast, I loaded Anita's travel bag into her car and kissed her goodbye. As she got into the car to leave, tears welled up in her eyes. "Pretty soon. Hopefully I won't be traveling, honey. Then I won't have to go through these goodbyes. I hate them." "I hate them as much as you do, dear." I reassured her. "I'll see you Friday night and we'll just get takeout so you can rest." "Sounds good. Bye." I watched her pull out of the garage and into the street. I waved at her, then headed inside to finish getting ready to leave for the office. When I arrived at work, I went up to the engineering department and grabbed a cup of coffee in the break room before heading to my desk. I had barely had a chance to sit down when the phone rang. "Fillmore," I announced to whoever was calling. "Jack, could you come into my office for a minute?" "Sure, Evan. I'll be right there." Evan was my boss, so I grabbed a coffee and headed to his office. When he entered, he waved me in and sat me down in a chair. "Jack, I think you're going to like this. I remember you telling me last Friday that Anita would be traveling this week, so I have a little trip for you if you're interested. Gil Hawkins, our service engineer in California, is sick and can't deal with a problem a customer in San Jose is having with one of our models. You have more experience with this model than anyone else, so would you like to go to San Jose and check it out?" "Hi, we don't have much to do right now, and you're right. I'm running late this week, so when do you want to see me? Get Kathy right away to get the reservation and tickets, and you can call the client to let them know you're coming, and find out what the problem is." "That sounds good. I'll look into it." I was starting to feel a little more enthusiastic about life. I can come home, pack my bags, and fly out of here this afternoon, and be at the customer's place in the morning. Okay. Have a safe trip. I stopped at the desk of Evan's secretary, Kathy, and told her what I needed in terms of flights and reservations, and then stopped at my desk to call a client and determine their problem before heading home to pack. On the way home, I grinned to myself because a plan was already forming in my head that if I finished work quickly, I could surprise my wife with a stop in Denver on the way home. The prospect of spending a couple days with her in Denver was getting more exciting by the minute. While I was waiting for my flight at the airport, I called Anita on her cell phone, but she didn't pick up, so I left a voicemail that I would be staying with my relatives for a couple of days and that she would call me on my cell phone in the evenings. Everything went great. I was at the customer's house on Tuesday morning, made the necessary adjustments to the equipment, and by noon, everything was tested and working satisfactorily. Back at the hotel, I called the airline and boarded a flight that would take me to Denver at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. After checking out of the hotel in San Jose, I headed to the San Francisco airport where I had dinner. While I was eating, Anita called me on my cell phone and we talked for a few minutes. She asked how my family was doing, and I answered as if I were at their home. She said the negotiations were progressing, but she was tired and would spend a quiet evening in her hotel room. We said goodbye with expressions of love, and after eating, we boarded my flight. At 9:45, I checked in at the hotel desk in Anita's room, and after verifying my identity, I was given a card to enter her room. As I quietly entered the room, I saw that there was a lamp lit above the computer desk, and her laptop was on it. Closed, but Anita was nowhere to be seen. I put my suitcase down and peeked into the bedroom, but it was empty, as was the bathroom. Well, I thought, she hasn't gone back to her room yet, so I'll sit and wait. Or maybe I'll go down and see if she's there. And then I noticed that the door to the next room was ajar. I approached it, and it opened silently on well-oiled hinges. I looked around the living room in the next room, but saw no one. Puzzled, I stepped into the room, and suddenly I heard a groan from the bedroom. When I walked quietly to the bedroom door, my heart didn't stop, but my breathing quickened. Maybe my heart didn't stop, but my breath quickened at what I saw in the dimly lit room. Anita stood before me, naked, on the bed, next to a man whose face I couldn't see, and his cock was deep inside her. Her eyes were closed, and she was gently riding him in an obvious ecstasy of pre-orgasmic bliss, his hands tweaking her breasts and nipples. My first impulse was to rush over to her and beat the guy to a pulp, but reason overrode emotion, and I slowly backed away from the door and back into her room. Opening my travel bag, I pulled out the digital camera I had brought with me to take some souvenir shots and walked back to the other bedroom door. Turning off the flash and setting the camera to shoot in low light, I stood quietly and took a few shots of the scene on the bed without them noticing my presence. They were both so engrossed in what they were doing that they had their eyes closed and were completely oblivious to their surroundings. Before returning to the room, I checked the open briefcase on the desk, found a business card, and checked the name. Sam Harris, our company's chief negotiator. I put the card in my pocket. When I got back to her room, I pulled out the camera-computer interface cable I'd been carrying and connected the camera to her laptop. We had the same photo program on our laptops, so it was easy to download a picture from my camera and set it on her desktop. I then packed my camera in my travel bag and quietly left her room. Before I left, I heard her scream as she experienced an orgasm. I almost cried right there, but continued onto the elevator. After returning the card to the counter, I called the airline to find out when the next flight to St. Louis was leaving. I was lucky that there was a 6:30 a.m. flight that would get me home by 9:30 a.m. If I was lucky, I estimated that would be just about the time Anita would open her laptop at the conference table. That's when she'll realize she's been caught, and she'll also know that our marriage is over. I returned to the airport and checked into a nearby motel where I couldn't sleep. But I kept imagining what I saw in the bedroom at her hotel. I cried and let my distress come out in tears. When I left the motel at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was in tears, and my thought was to consummate our marriage as soon as possible. As I was driving back to St. Louis, my cell phone rang, and I checked the number, seeing it was Anita. I turned it off and headed home. When I walked in the door, the phone was still ringing, but after checking the caller ID, I saw it was Anita again. As I hung up on the answering machine, I heard her crying into the receiver. "Jack, please call me immediately. I need to talk to you, darling. It's important." Ignoring her pitiful sobs, I got up and changed, then went and rented a U-Haul, then went back inside to start packing. If my calculations were correct, she would arrive around 4 in the afternoon, and I wanted to be out of the house by then. It took a few hours, but I managed to get all of my personal belongings out and move them into the rented storage room. Before packing up, I called our attorney and made an appointment with him for the afternoon. After unloading the items in the storage unit, I went to see our attorney and asked him to begin divorce proceedings immediately. I was tempted to cite adultery as the reason, but decided to cite incompatibility and save the adultery in case she wanted to fight for divorce. I also asked him to make a new will naming his brother as a beneficiary. I went into the bank and transferred half of our savings and new account balances into my name only, and then called my investment advisor and did the same with our accounts with him. With a sad heart, I reached my parents' house and taking my suitcase with me, I went up and walked through the open door. My mom saw me first and exclaimed loudly, "Jack, where have you been?" "Anita called here several times looking for you. Did you tell her you were staying here?" My father, who had already retired, came over and I sat down at the table and explained everything to them. They were shocked when I told them about Anita's infidelity and that our marriage had broken up. I asked if I could stay with them for a few days until I found an apartment with furniture, and they agreed. Apparently, my calculations were pretty accurate because around 6 in the evening, as we sat down to dinner, the doorbell rang. My father got up to answer it and returned a minute later with Anita behind him, looking very upset. Jack, why didn't you return my calls? I needed to talk to you. You moved all your stuff out of the house. I think the message I left on your desktop will tell you everything you need to know. Oh my God, I was so afraid it was you. Can we go somewhere and talk, honey? Please. Anita, I am no longer your lover, and I have nothing to talk to you about. I have already started divorce proceedings, and our attorneys can relay everything you need to know. What I saw in Denver has completely destroyed all my feelings for you, and I want you to leave so I can finish my dinner. Oh, please, Jack, no. Please don't do this without talking to me. What can you say that would atone for your infidelity? It certainly wasn't the rape I saw, and the pictures I have of it. You better call your lover Sam and tell him I'm going after him tomorrow. Maybe his wife will see things better than I do. Oh my God, can't we talk? Please, Jack. Please go, Anita. My dinner is getting cold. I'll tell you what. Why don't you write me a long letter telling me how you can justify breaking your wedding vows? I'm sure a smart lawyer like you can explain that it's all my fault and that you still love and respect me very much. With a sob, she turned away. But before she reached the door, she turned around. Please, Jack, don't end our marriage without talking to me. Goodbye, Anita. After she left, my parents still sat stunned. That was awfully cruel, Jack. Mom, do you want me to show you the pictures of her with her lover? That's what's cruel. She has absolutely no respect for me, and I can't live with that and will never be able to trust her again. Do you want me to give you grandchildren from a woman like that? I know, son, my father finally spoke. Maybe if things cool down a little, you'll be able to look at things differently. I knew my folks really liked Anita. I don't think so, Dad. Let's talk about something else so I can digest my food. All right, son. Anita. That Monday morning as I left the house, I was sorry I had to leave Jack behind, but I thought about how wonderful it would be when I returned and we could start our family. We had waited so long to make sure that financially and career-wise we were ready to be parents. Now everything was almost ready. The trip to Denver went without incident. I sat next to Sam Harris, our chief negotiator, and we talked a little about tomorrow's negotiations and then about what was going on in our families. He knew that when I got pregnant, I would be leaving my job, and he said he would miss me. Sam was 48 years old, married for 20 years, 2 kids in high school. Sam and I had been on the same negotiating team since before I was married, and we were very comfortable with each other. The other 2 members of our team sat behind us and had their own conversations. When we got to the hotel in Denver, we checked into our rooms, and as usual, Sam and I got adjoining rooms. This was originally done to facilitate late-night meetings about negotiating intricacies. But about 10 years ago, sex was initiated, and we convinced ourselves that it was a way to relieve stress after a hard day of negotiations. At the time, we told ourselves it wasn't cheating on our wife if it helped us work. Sometimes we laughed about it. Then, after Jack and I got married, for several years I didn't feel up to it, so we stopped doing it. Finally, during a particularly grueling negotiation, Sam asked if we could do it again to relieve stress and anxiety. I reluctantly agreed, and before I knew it, I was engaging in this activity with him again. The thrill of cheating and not getting caught had greatly increased my libido at home, so it was good for Jack too, and I didn't feel so bad. We did not meet on the first evening of this trip because I felt tired after dinner. However, after the first day of negotiations, I agreed to go to his place the next night. I don't know when or how Jack found out about it or how he got the picture, but when I opened my laptop the next morning and turned it on, I was stunned by what I saw on the screen. Sam was sitting next to me, and when he saw it, he quickly slammed the lid shut and asked his coworker on the other end of the table to leave us alone for a few minutes. We carried the laptop out into the hallway. He was furious. "What kind of porn do you have on your desktop?" he asked. "I don't know, Sam. The last time I put it on, it wasn't there." I was still in shock. "Let me look at it again." I opened it again, and we looked at the picture together. "Oh shit, it's you!" he exclaimed. "Aya, how can it be me?" "I don't know, but it's you. And underneath you, it's probably me, though you can't see my face." "Did you leave your laptop unattended yesterday?" "No, he was with me during the trip and in my room while I was in yours." "Could someone have gotten into your room with a camera?" "I don't think so. The door was closed and I suppose locked." "You need to go back to the hotel and try to find out if anyone was given a card to your room last night. I'll handle everything here. Try to contact Jack and find out where he was last night. It couldn't have been him. I talked to him last night at his folks' house." "Did you call his parents' cell phone?" "No, he asked me to call his cell phone." I don't like the sound of that. He could have been anywhere when you talked to him. Call me on my cell phone if you hear anything. Do what you can to undo the damage. Take a cab to the hotel. Okay, bye. I broke into a sweat. If Jack had taken the picture and put it in my laptop, I had to think it was a message that our marriage was over. I had to go back to the hotel and see what I could find out. The girl at the front desk called me a cab, and 15 minutes later, I was at the hotel, first checking at the desk to see if anyone had gotten a card for my room. The clerk checked the computer, and I was informed that Mr. Jack Fillmore had been issued a card at 9:45 the previous evening. The card was returned a half hour later. It was then that I realized that my marriage was probably over. The man I loved more than anything in the world was gone, but I had to fight to get him back. Once I got up to my room, I immediately tried to call his cell phone and his work. His cell phone didn't answer. It was turned off, but I left a voice message that it was important for him to call me as soon as possible. His secretary at work informed me that he was away on company business in California and should be back tomorrow. That was it. He left for California and stopped on the way back to surprise me. I think we were both surprised. After calling his folks, they said they hadn't seen him in a few days. I asked them to ask him to call me as soon as they could reach him. I called home and got no answer, but left a message there as well. I sat in the room and cried. I didn't have a chance to talk to him unless I went home, so I picked up the phone and booked tickets to get back to St. Louis on the next flight. After packing, I called Sam on his cell phone and told him what I had found out. He was quiet for a minute before he spoke. Anita, I think we're both facing divorce or worse. What could be worse than divorce? The company where we work has a policy against executive-level employees fraternizing. We could both be fired. It wouldn't look good in our reports. Oh my God, I should have known that. But as far as I'm concerned, losing Jack would have been much worse. Losing your family would be bad too. But you need to go back to St. Louis and find Jack. Maybe he'll listen to reason. I've already booked tickets for a flight that leaves at noon. I have to be back there by 4:30. For my own sake, I have to find him and talk to him. I'll let you know how it goes. I'll have to stay here until the negotiations are over. I'll be waiting to hear from you. We said goodbye and hung up. Grabbing my bag and laptop, I hurried to the lobby, checked out, and took the hotel limo to the airport. All the way to St. Louis, I prayed that Jack would talk to me. I had to explain that it was just sex, and it didn't affect him in any way. I had to put everything on the line so that he would be unemotional about my infidelity and accept it for what it was. Just meaningless sex. When I got home, I didn't notice anything unusual at first. But when I went into our bedroom and saw that all his clothes and personal belongings were gone, I realized that he knew everything and had left me. I had to find him. After many fruitless phone calls, I finally decided to go to his family to see if he was there or if they had any idea where he was. He was at his in-laws, and his reception made me sick with insensitive cruelty. He informed me that he was in the process of filing for divorce and did not want to talk to me, that there was nothing I could say that would change his mind. After he sarcastically told me to write him a long letter explaining my position, I left, got in my car, and cried. The family we had planned would never happen. We will never grow old together and enjoy grandchildren together. For selfish reasons, I was even more distressed at the thought that by the time I found another husband, I would be too old to conceive a child. Finally, I started the car and drove back to our empty house. After an incoherent dream, during which I kept seeing Anita and Sam in bed together, I got up early, went down the stairs to my folks' house, and put on coffee. Then I grabbed my laptop and camera and started downloading the pictures from the camera into the computer. I thought about the fact that I would have to see if I could somehow recognize Sam in the pictures. Looking at the pictures, I couldn't make out Sam's face clearly. But then I noticed something on his right arm that was reaching for Anita's chest. Blowing on the spot, I saw what I needed. A tattoo, and blowing on it even more, I saw that it was a heart with the word Marie on it. Sam's wife's name was Marie. That was all I needed, so I went back upstairs, showered, and got ready for work. When I got downstairs, my mom was already up and making breakfast. Later at work, I burned a couple CDs of Sam's photos and tattoo. I also printed out a couple sets and put them in a folder. Then I went to our HR department and asked to meet with the manager. After all, Phil and I knew each other. It wasn't that big a company, and we played golf together. I pulled some photos out of the folder and laid them out in front of him. "What are those, Jack? Pornographic pictures?" he asked with a smirk. "Sorry, Phil. They may look pornographic, but these are my wife and Sam Harris, and you can tell by the date and time on them that they were taken Tuesday night in Sam's hotel room in Denver. They were there in negotiations with the company." "Oh, damn, Jack, I'm sorry. What can I do?" You can fire them both for cause under the anti-paternity clause in their contract with the company. We've never applied this before. Are you sure you want to do this? It'll bring the affair out in the open. I assume that means you're going to divorce Anita over this? I've already instructed my attorney to prepare the papers, but if you don't pursue this matter, I will file a lawsuit against the company. All right, Jack. I'll get this to our legal department and get started. I then went in to see my boss, Evan, to let him know what was going on in my life. He was appropriately horrified that I had told him about my wife and Sam Harris. When I asked for the rest of the week off as a vacation, he readily agreed. In parting, he congratulated me on a job well done on my trip to California. The customer called and complimented me on how quickly I solved their problem and got their production line working again. He also asked if I would consider taking over the territory in California since the current field engineer was retiring for health reasons. I told him I would think about it and give him an answer when I returned to work next week. On my way out of Evan's office, I was stopped by his secretary, Kathy. Jack, your wife has been around looking for you. She said she'd be back later. Kathy, I don't want to see my wife under any circumstances. Please let her know that when she returns. Oh my God, Jack, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize there was a problem. There's a big problem, Kat. We're getting a divorce. She and Sam Harris are dancing the horizontal tango. I knew by noon everyone in the plant would know about it. Katie liked to gossip. Then I went back to my desk and called Marie Harris, Sam's wife. I knew her from the company picnics, and I realized that my revelations about our spouses could be very difficult for her. Marie, it's Jack Fillmore. How are you doing, Jack? I talked to Sam last night, and he asked if I'd heard from you, but he didn't say what you might have contacted me about. Marie, we need to talk as soon as possible. Okay, Jack. Can you come over now? I have an appointment with my hairdresser at 1 o'clock, but I'm free right now. Do you still live on Fremont Street? Oh, yeah. Okay, I know where you live. I'll be there in 15 minutes. When I arrived at the Harrises, I was filled with dread at what I was about to do to this woman and her family. But I knew Sam shouldn't get away with retribution and let Anita take the fall. Hey, Jack, come on in. Do you want some coffee? I just brewed a fresh one, she asked, inviting me into the living room. That would be lovely, Marie. Just black, please. A moment later, she returned with the coffee and sat down in the chair across from me. So, what is it? I thought about breaking the news to her more gently, but then decided to get it over with as quickly as possible. Marie, I caught your husband and my wife making love in Denver, and I am seeking a divorce from Anita and the dismissal of both of them from their jobs. I hate to tell you this, but it will become public knowledge very soon, and I have decided to prepare you. I have pictures to back up what I am saying if you would like to see them. I watched her face to determine how my words had worked and was surprised at the lack of any real reaction. Jack, I guess I've suspected for a long time that he was flirting with the company, but I hoped it wasn't true. Sam has always been a loving husband and father, and I didn't want to rock the boat, but I realized that someday something would happen and their affair would become public. I guess it did. I'm sorry for you and your marriage, and from my perspective, I'm sorry that Sam might get fired. He's not that old anymore, and it will be hard for him to find another job that pays as well. Now I have to decide what I'm going to do. Would you like a set of the pictures I have? Yes. Leave them, and I'll try to find the strength to look at them. I'm sorry, Marie, but I just couldn't let that happen. Anita and I were going to start a family, but I can't live with a man I can't trust and I can't respect. The mother of our children should possess both. I understand, Jack. Thank you for telling me. I wouldn't have wanted to hear about it from any other source first. And let me tell you again how sorry I am for you and Anita. I'm sure she's just as devastated and remorseful as Sam is when she finds out I know about his affair. I wish it had been a one-time thing. Then it would have been easier to forgive. But I believe it went on for years, and it's hard to accept now that everything is out in the open. I have my pride, and I should be able to keep my cool. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know, I told her, leaving and heading back to my parents' house. Epilogue. It's been 6 months since I initiated divorce proceedings. This morning I received a copy of the divorce agreement with Anita. I have not spoken to her or seen her again since she arrived at my parents' house. Everything was handled by my attorney. I gave her the mortgaged house with furniture and furnishings with large sums of money on it, so that she would waive all claims against me. I also took my name off the mortgage. She took full responsibility for the payments. Of course, with no job, she had to put the house up for sale and lost her shirt on that deal. She tried to contest the divorce, but I threatened to change the cause of divorce to adultery and put pictures of her with Sam on the internet if she didn't sign the papers within 48 hours. She signed them within the deadline, and so today I am a free man. I guess she decided she didn't need me that much. Anyway, she was fired from her job, but She's a smart lawyer and negotiator, so within a month, she found another one. Doesn't make as much money and doesn't have the benefits that seniority at her previous job gave her. But I hear she's doing well and is dating again. Best of luck to her friend if she finds him. I wonder if she told him about our divorce and the reasons for it. Maybe I should enlighten him. Marie divorced Sam and financially screwed him over. He also found another job after the layoff. But with his new salary, he is having a hard time paying child support and alimony. I currently live in Santa Maria, California, in a quiet place by the coast, about halfway between the Bay Area and Los Angeles. This allows me to work in both the southern and northern parts of the state. I moved here about 4 months ago and rented an apartment in a complex with other singles and young couples, most of whom are trying to save up for a down payment on a house. Housing costs are high here, and it takes a lot of money to get into the market. I have a steady friend who lives in the same complex. She is divorced like me, but we are comfortable together, and I think we will see how things work out in the future. Since I'm traveling so much, I need to trust whoever I marry. But I need to step up early if we want to start a family. The biological clock keeps ticking.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there There are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" "Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that?" "Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.